This is the Bonus Section Podcast, episode number 94. Practice communicating better. Are you the type of person that knows you were meant for something greater in this lifetime, and that somewhere inside of you, there's just this bigger version of yourself trying to break through? But despite all your self-development, you just can't seem to find the way up. Well, then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Bonus Section and the host of this podcast, and I'm a person just like you trying to learn how to live the most fulfilling life possible. So to help you take immediate action to do that and move in a better direction, we take all the notes from each episode and we post them at freethinkingtools.com. There's a short list over there. I understand it hasn't been working, so if you've been listening to this, I apologize, but we are putting that back in place so that you can download a couple episodes, listen to them, have some notes, and just think. And that's what this episode's about, practice communicating better and how to do that. So the first part of this is that better communication actually starts with listening. So when we think of communication, maybe we think of public speaking and we think of all the other methodologies where we're communicating at somebody. Well, communication is obviously, when you think about it for 2 seconds, a two-way street. You're communicating with somebody else. And there are multiple mediums. I mean, obviously talking to somebody is the most kinesthetic or physical process where you're across from somebody with somebody and you're communicating that way. But communication is just a massive word when you take it in an all-encompassing way. So when you think about it that way, but you do think about it still in the classic way of communicating with somebody else, it's just so much better to start by practicing listening. And at this point in my life, well, so easy to say, but my gosh, every time I think about the 17, 18, 19-year-old version of myself, even the early days of my business career, I wonder how good I was at listening or not so much. Because I was enthusiastic. I still am. And I was ambitious. And when you're enthusiastic and ambitious, you tend to go right to somebody and you begin to communicate your agenda at them. And even if they're smiling and nodding and accepting it, it doesn't mean that it's really being communicated well. I can promise you that that's exactly accurate in a business context, because when I learned how to become a better communicator, just really more through practice. See, that's a good thing. I'm not telling you to go back to college and get a communications degree. I'm simply saying, just think about this logically and commonsensically first, that by listening, you just learn so much about somebody. I heard it again today. I was at the gym and I was listening to I think it was a podcast or just a YouTube video, and somebody was referencing when you actually start listening to people, it is staggering how much they will tell you about what's going on with them. And oftentimes, they're not even conscious of how much they're telling you and why they're telling you that and what's really on their mind. So many people just want to get what's out in their head or on their hearts and on their chest out. So that when you become a good listener, it's stunning how much somebody will get out of themselves. I mean, think about the communication that a psychologist goes through with a client. And really good ones ask simple, provocative questions, and they do more listening in that 50-minute session per se than anything else. Because if you're asked a couple of provocative questions and you're in a venue where you at least feel comfortable enough to share and you begin to talk. But I can tell you this actually works even when we call people in a business context and we ask the right questions and then shut up and listen. It's amazing what they tell us. And that's important to us because the more that we know about them in that context, the more we can help. And I know that as a coach. So you're always balancing the enthusiasm and the ambition to get your ideas across with listening first. It doesn't mean that you still can't sell your agenda, your unique selling proposition, your service, your product, whatever it might be. But it just means that when you listen, you get a much better feeling for what's most important to the person you're communicating with. So start by listening. And what that helps you do when you get to the next point about being a better communicator is it puts you in a state where, well, maybe you do get excited and you want to say, well, I have the answer. I hear this all the time as a trainer of people that make telemarketing calls. They get so excited, nervous, anxious, all these things that happen, they start to trip over the other person and they just don't wait it out. So it's not just listening, it's listening with patience. Let somebody fully articulate their thought. Now, of course, if they begin to just repeat themselves or they're in a heightened anxiety state and they're just babbling on, sure, you can rescue somebody from drowning themselves in their own communication. But I would just say be patient in that listening and don't rush your responses and your insights. That's what I mean by tripping over somebody. Oftentimes, you'll be speaking to somebody and you'll really want to communicate your thought because you think it's helpful or there's an opportunity for you. And again, there are so many different contexts within which this two-way conversation is happening that I can't give you anything other than, say, an anecdote in sales, which I'll give you. And we could do it love too, by the way, for all of you that want to be in love or you feel lonely and you're looking for love. The truth is, if you just do some listening and you're patient in your response and you make sure that person has fully articulated their thought and then you respond, when somebody feels listened to, they really know they were listened to when your response is contextually relevant to what they just said. Let that sink in. If you were a patient listener and you actually heard the story because you were truly listening, not worrying about what you were going to say, not worrying about what you were going to sell, not worried about how you were going to convince that person that you were the right person to go on a date with or whatever it might be. But you listened. And sometimes there are techniques. That's interesting. So let me get this right. You just said the main point that I heard you just say, you can do things like that to slow down your response and your insight because you just want to formally, by communicating it verbally, recognize that you listened by repeating something that they said or summarizing the point of what they were talking about or pulling out and extracting for them what they didn't even know was right there. Geez, in my experience, I heard you. And in my experience, I see that when people are worried about this, and all of a sudden, right. So by not being anything but a patient listener and then taking your time to reiterate, then respond with your insight, I am telling you that little concept in communication has changed the way that I coach and teach people in a business context. So much for the better, I don't even know where to start. I've always wanted to, and if you're a regular listener to the bonus section, I've always wanted to just live the life of a person for others. And again, I'm ambitious and aggressive and all those things that, I am. So this is toughy for me. This part of communication is to listen and really let it sink in before I respond and I get there and I give this insight, right? So, but I am telling you, in a business context, I have been training other people to do this who are not me. And collectively, we are finding a tremendously different positive result. One, just communicating like this makes for better, happier communication, even when somebody feels aggravated that you're communicating with them because they don't have any context or interest in what you have to offer. In any context, dating, I'm not really interested in you. That's not a personal condemnation. It's just that there's not a fit, right? So business, dating, it's all similar when it comes to communication. You just have to listen and respond. And it's all good, right? So those responses in our business context have helped us serve so many people because what we decided to do was give away our best response, our best insight, and in some cases, our best productized information for free, expecting absolutely nothing in return, just simply hoping that we left that person, whether they did business with us or not, in a better place. So think about it. Young people have, young kids that are in their late teens, early 20s, and they're in the process of meeting other people that they like. And in some cases, they might have a romantic feeling towards that person who doesn't reciprocate. But okay, that doesn't make that other person a bad person. It's just not a match. It's not a fit. But you can be in a good relationship with that person, right? If you just stop holding on to everything that you want and start giving, you might end up with a great friend. There's just not a romantic fit. Let that sink in. I mean, you probably are already in that context. I mean, there are a lot of people that I know that don't do business with me, and I have a great friendship with. Sometimes it's even family. You don't end up doing business with them for multiple reasons. That doesn't change the relationship, and I still gave away my best information for free. It's just powerful. It's changed everything for us. Now, how do you get prepared to be better at all of this patience and resilience and stoic-like behavior? Meaning even when things don't go wrong, you don't overreact in a negative way. Stoics. I've been learning about the Stoics, the Stoic philosophers from the 3rd century BC. Impressive people. Well, that's a hint on how you get better at communication. You read a lot and you write a lot. Okay? You read a lot and you write a lot. I can't believe how many people I hear say, I can't stand reading. I'm not a good reader. I don't like to read. That's a frightening concept. And I'll tell you why. You've just never really taken a minute, he said, the great communicator, taken a minute to think about what you're most interested in learning about, because that opens up everything. And then simply to take some time to Google an article about that thing and read about it. You probably are doing more reading than you even think you are. You're online and you're reading something, you're reading a post, you're reading. So you can read, and you are a good reader. It's just that you think it's some sort of a formal, negative, school-driven thing to read a lot, but it's not at all. And the amazing thing about reading to help you with your communication is not only, right? Not only does it teach you new words, new sentence structures, it teaches you a lot of concepts too that you're able to rely on when it comes to communication. I have a lot of people that laugh when I give a crazy metaphor, or I make an analogy, or I have an anecdotal situation that I relate to the situation. And it's just simply because over time I've realized that a breadth of reading, meaning I don't just focus on business reading. You probably can't see it in the podcast because I think the high-level camera there has it blurred out in the background. But behind me, there are books all about psychology and influence. And then there are small business books. And there's one back there that says The Stoics Challenge, something I was just talking about, the ones you can't see. Dostoevsky, The Idiot. I just finished reading that. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. That was before that. The Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn is the current one I have. And now these might sound like these big esoteric books to you, but they're just the way that my journey in reading and learning and being curious takes me, is that I will just accumulate a fistful of books that I really want to know the concepts in that book. I want to know what happens. I'm not great at remembering a lot of minute detail. I'm very good at chunking up and simplifying key concepts. But the more that I read, the more that these concepts and these ideas are available to me. And what's stunning, this is a biblical saying, that there's nothing new under the sun. If you look into the Old Testament, you read some Solomon, you will find that that theme is repeated. There's nothing new under the sun. So there are a lot of universal concepts that are expressed in books, and there's a lot of human drama that has played out in history. And, we often say, have we learned anything from history? And oftentimes, no, we repeat a lot of the same mistakes, or we really never change as humans, or evolution is super, super slow. A lot of that can be learned, and you can become so much more intelligent about that. And the reason I'm reading Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago is because somebody credited him with largely bringing down the Gulag system, the imprisonment system in the Soviet Union. And this book talks about a period of time that goes right up to 1956. That's not very long ago. And some of this stuff, and I'm only 65 pages in, it is barbaric. But I learn about that. And I see what the human capacity is to quickly compromise right down the evil chain, right? So you become aware of that. You become aware that people have that capacity, and you begin to expect less of some people. You're not so easily led. You're not so gullible. You see what I mean? So now all of a sudden I'm understanding, and I can use this for nefarious or benevolent purposes. That's what learning and reading does, is that there are a lot of people. There's a book behind me called Influence by Robert Cialdini. There is a real way in general that we respond to certain triggers. As much as we want to think we're well read and that we're in full control of our faculties and our ability to respond a certain way, we're not. We have an animalistic brain that reacts to certain triggers. Well, if you know that because you're well read and you've done some reading and you have those concepts, you can use that, as I do, in a benevolent way to train people on how to beware, how to not be taken advantage of, how to take advantage of plans and ideas and concepts, because they're learned now and they read a lot. And it just takes you on this incredible journey. But the next thing is to write a lot. Read a lot, write a lot. So I think that's an incredible thing too. And sitting next to me, if you're on YouTube, you'll see me. I'll pick it up here for the video. I always have this double yellow pads here today, and there is never far away from me a pen. And I'm not talking about writing a book in a formal way. I'm talking about getting the thoughts that are stimulated by reading. For example, in reading, I'll typically write in the book, because I'll just capture a word, or I'll start to write something down, and that way it comes. It's something happens. You own that thought when you take it out of your head, because there's a lot of noise. I mean, read 65 pages this morning and only get some main concepts. If I really wanted to learn a new word or make note of a concept for a podcast, I write it down, and then it's permanent. Or at least temporarily, it's much more permanent than all the noise in my head. So this reading and writing is helping me communicate in those methodologies. So I'm a better reader. So I can take what I have in front of me and I can read it aloud to a crowd. If I have some notes and I want to read, now I'm much more articulate. It helps me speak on these podcasts better, slower, more articulately. And the writing helps me. I wrote this before we started, and it doesn't take me that long anymore because I write so much and I chunk up my writing, and it's so summary driven that I'm able to write 3 podcasts, sit down, and then articulate all of them. So I've been here probably for a couple hours today, just looking at the clock while I record this. I read this morning, I wrote this afternoon, and I'm speaking to you and recording that, all in the course of a small window of time. It just doesn't take me that much time. So let's get into the bonus section of the bonus section podcast. Communication is a skill that can be learned. That's what I'm trying to prove to you. By being conscious of your current volume of listening, reading, and writing before you speak. I'm going to say this again because it's a nice summary statement that I'm going to end this with, that the bonus section of this podcast today is that communication in its entirety is a skill that can be learned by anybody, I'll add, by them being conscious, becoming aware of their volume, of how much they listen, how much they read and what they read, and how much they write before they open their mouth to communicate their thoughts. Okay? All right, let's go back and summarize all the bullet points, including that one again. I think that's a really important point. The idea is, I'm imploring you, please practice communicating better. And you do that by first understanding that better communication starts with listening. You become a great listener, you will become, or at least be moving in the direction of becoming a great communicator. 2, when you go to speak, please don't rush your responses and insights. Let somebody finish, unless, of course, they need to be stopped because they're a runaway and they're getting lost in their thoughts. Then you can save them, but at least go back and summarize their key point for them. And then I just have to say it. Read a lot. write a lot. You're doing probably those things, maybe not even knowing it, by reading texts and reading posts and writing texts and writing posts. You're all doing it in a digital context. But I'm just saying, be more curious and more intellectual. Go read something that makes you curious, and you really want to learn that concept, right? And then write down the key points. That's it. Just a couple things, and just keep writing. And lastly, remember that the bonus section here today is that communication is a skill that can be learned by being conscious or aware of your volume of listening, reading, and writing before you speak. I'll summarize it this way. True leaders, by the way, are well trained in the art of communication. Great communicators understand that when they listen and observe, they're able to organize their thoughts quickly before speaking. However, the simple secret to becoming a great communicator is to practice reading and writing a lot so that you develop a strong mental database of words and concepts that will be easily recalled when needed on demand. All right, remember, you can take immediate action to get moving towards your goals because we take all the notes from each episode and we post them at freethinkingtools.com, and we give you instant access. Also, don't forget you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We also post our content on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the bonus channel. We'd also appreciate it if you would join our mission of becoming people for others and share our content with other people just like you so that they get the help that they need as well. But remember, we sign off the same way every time. Nobody's coming for you. Nobody. So go get to work on yourself and a better plan for your goal achievement, and we'll see you in the next episode to hopefully motivate you to do just that. Thanks.